So, hello everybody. Can you, does it?
Yeah, it's recording now. I can hear you.
Perfect. Hello everybody. Thanks for joining today's session. And today we'll be talking about designing for accessibility, one of my most passionate areas, and you will see why I'm so passionate about accessibility. I'm the founder and Chief Innovations Officer because I have another CEO developing in my company, and I did not want to have that title of CEO. I wanted to focus on innovations, and somebody focuses on the business and the clients, and I want to focus mostly on innovations, solutions, accessibility, anything related to front end. So this company has been in business for last 1 month only. So it's very new company, but it's been a lot of interest with other people collaborating with us and then joining forces to work on nonprofit organization, volunteering projects, to work on startup product ideas, to work on anything that is related to UI, UX, design, development, accessibility, anything related to front end, as well as some of the back end. So for any new product development. So there's a lot of, if you would like to volunteer and if you have some bandwidth, we have a couple of nonprofit projects and especially one other company we have kicked off. It's called accessineed.org. It's for accessibility in need. And it's a nonprofit and charity organization. We had 6 members. We had a kickoff meeting, and then we are going forward with creating that organization, bringing all of the innovations and solutions as a one-stop shop where people can see what are the current solutions that are available for accessibility needs and all of that, along with removing the stigma for people or employers trying to hire people with disabilities. We want to remove that stigma and say, hey, people with accessibility needs can be much more valuable or equally valuable as your regular employees. And whatever investment you put in some of their equipment, you will have more return on investment. So that being said, that website is going to be developed, accessineed.org, and we'll be showcasing some of the innovations that we have done in this area. So feel free to reach out to me if you're interested in volunteering with any of this nonprofit and exciting work we are going to host soon. So without any further ado, let me go into the session. Okay. So a quick background on myself. I have my bachelor's degree from India in mechanical engineering, and then I came to United States right away and went to University of Missouri Rolla near St. Louis, and I did my mechanical engineering over there. My thesis was published in structure and multidisciplinary optimization. So the challenge that I had after my master's in mechanical engineering was trying to find an opportunity that helps me. I was in design and optimization, but mechanical engineering, it was very challenging with the visa status. So I had to move to software engineering side to be able to have gainful employment. So from there, quickly I realized that I loved design and I loved user interface. And then I was able to fortunately work with lots of big companies in healthcare sector, hospitality, and all of my companies that have been associated with our auditing, financial services, investment banking, mortgage banking, credit unions, and software consulting. So wide variety and domain experience in different fields. So this is where I take all of my enterprise UI architecture, user experience design, development and strategies, and how to work with develop, because I'm a combination of a developer and a designer. And it's like, if you ask me, who do you like more, design or engineering and architecture, I say both, because they are two eyes for me. I cannot say design I'm favorite to my left eye or I favor right eye. That's how equally balanced I am with design, architecture, and user experience and development, UI. So my personal story, I've been born with a rare genetic disorder called macular dystrophy. So what it is this ABCD4 gene. That gene has some challenges, and myself and I have three sisters. My youngest sister has the same challenge. So with this disability, we have something called blind spots, and our blind spots make us. It's almost like macular degeneration, right? Where you want to see, you cannot see. So you have to completely train your eyes to see around that blind spot. So when we try to see around the blind spot, you may get closer to this, but it's not that great of a vision. So my vision, with the best corrected lens in the world, um, because my macular has a problem, one of the doctors said, because your film has a problem, even though we have the best lens, your photo is going to come out bad. So uh, we cannot do anything with more better with the lens. So because of the macular challenge, and there was no cure for that, what I have. So my vision gradually got from 20 by 30, 40 to 20 by 200. So 20 by 70 is where you become legally blind. So I'm way past legally blind, and it was very challenging because of this macular having that challenge. And once I understood that it's not going to go away. It's going to be something that I have to make friends with. So I started embracing my disability. I started becoming more comfortable, and whatever equipment I need, I started asking my employers or asking people for help whenever I needed. Uh, 3 years ago, like my license was revoked for 3 years, and it felt like being in a jail because I have for anything I wanted to go out, I cannot. I have to call Uber or Lyft or ask my wife or friend. So I was completely dependent, and I said to myself, like, I embrace this disability now. I still need some of the freedom. Can I get my freedom? So fortunately, I got an idea to go on YouTube and research on driving with kind of macular degeneration or something. And I found out something like bioptic driving is available, and that will help people to have special glasses that has telescopes, and with that telescopes you can still drive. So I'm a regular driver. I have no tickets and no accidents with my 14 years or 15 years of driving history. I never had anything. I'm one of the safest drivers. I'm the guy who is on the rightmost lane going slow. On a 70 speed, I'm going at 65 because I'm careful, right? So you all know me on the interstate, that particular guy, because driving is a privilege for me, not a right. And I don't want to lose my privileges because after losing those privileges for 3 years, it was challenging. So all this, the reason I'm sharing all this story is like why I wanted to create a nonprofit organization and help people with disabilities was being when we experience the pain and discomfort, the challenges, and we overcome those challenges, that is where we can take those experiences and help other people uh, overcome the challenges if they are similar in your sector. If somebody has vision disability, I could definitely help them, right? And my colleague or my ex-colleague in Access I Need, the nonprofit we are working on, he has physical disabilities. So he can help people with finding opportunities with physical disabilities and what they can work with. So that's one of the reasons why I'm very passionate in accessibility. So my vision is in we have 1.3 billion people all over the world who are disabled. We are in every city, every state, every country, right? So in 10 years, this disabled population is going to grow. I'm estimating it will be 1.65 or almost close to 1.8 billion people. But we want to enable the working working environment, the business environment, rather than not hiring people with disabilities. Everybody could hire people with disabilities with which they can produce contributions to the organization in an area where they do not have to worry about their disability. So That's one of my mission and goals with my nonprofit. But for now, in this session, we are going to talk about how we can start working on designing for uh, accessibility. Not only just design, I have talks on designing for accessibility, developing for accessibility, testing for accessibility. So it's one of the major components of one of the online course I created on UX professional design. So we'll talk about that later, but here's the cdc.gov statistics. 26% of Americans, that is 61 million people, have some level of disability. That is 1 in 4 people have some level of disability. And these disabilities and impairments and severe impairments are on wide ranges. And these wide ranges have different percentages, right? Motor disability, cognitive disability, hearing, vision disability, and self-care. So all of these disabilities and impairments combined together is 61 million United States and 1.3 billion all over the world. So 2 in 5 people age above 65 are people with disabilities, because one of the rate macular degeneration that it's similar to mine happens as around like 55 to 60 years old. It's called age-related macular degeneration, and suddenly people start to lose their vision, and so until then they were normal human beings, and suddenly they become into disabled human beings, and that is where uh, there's all these statistics. 1 in 4 women have some level of disability, right? And 2 in 5 non-Hispanic. So the statistics goes on and on, right? It is now time to make sure that accessibility is being one of the key constraints of anything that is being developed, not just in the software industry, but also in mechanical industry, electrical industry, and civil industry. So different engineering sectors. So what is accessibility? It is giving people with disabilities and impairments alternative ways to access our products and services. So as the definition is such a clear two-line definition, giving people with disabilities access. So it could be an alternative access, it could be an access with the existing product, but with an enhanced way of giving those accessibility for all different types of challenges: cognitive, visual, auditory, motor, or speech. So that is basically the two-line definition of what accessibility is. So having accessibility, right? So let's say a building was constructed and the building missed on creating an accessibility ramp. Does this ramp only help people with wheelchair? The answer is no. It does help with people with wheelchair, but it also helps with people loading heavy luggage or heavy equipment that's been getting loaded. Um, People with strollers, people, senior citizens with uh, assistive technology, and also it helps people who are in an emergency situation. So that means this building, let's say if it was 3-floor buildings, there was a person working in the 3rd floor and it doesn't have an elevator, then that person needs to be brought down to an ambulance, and then having an accessibility ramp is now helpful for everyone. It's just not for people with wheelchairs. So developing for accessibility helps everybody. So same is the case with the software. Developing for accessibility helps everybody. So how does it help, right? So we have seen cognitive, visual, auditory, and motor speeches, right? So all of these people get helped with the products or services that has been designed by your organization or anything. And then it helps to follow the legislations and to follow the laws that are available in the current legislature, not only in United States but also in other countries like Ireland, Australia, UK, any other countries. There are laws related to accessibility. And there are lawsuits. So when there are laws and people are not following those laws, what happens is accessibility lawsuits go up and up. And this is last year's slide. I still have to update and get the latest statistics, but the lawsuits have gone up, as you can see, from 2013 to 2018. These are Americans with Disability Title III lawsuits in the federal court. They are just going up and up each year, um, because businesses are not complying with the accessibility laws. So there is a high chances that it could be challenged in the court. So to avoid that, it's better to do this. So also having accessibility helps with the search engine optimization, right? So when the search engine optimization is happening with your site or with your web application, what um, all the indexing and ranking and relevancy ranking that's going on with your SEO, when it's accessible, it it gets ranked better. So it is when it's responsive and it's accessible, then you are even better ranked because you have covered the mobile devices, tablet devices. Your website works in those form factors, but also your website is accessible, makes you better ranked in search engines. So until now, I mean, this is the way the UX design some of the times flows through. And accessibility, some people consider it part of usability. It's part of like a sub-discipline, which I kind of disagree. Accessibility should not be a sub-discipline of usability, but it should be a main main discipline. Along with the design, it is with the design, it has to go side by side with the design, and not just with the design and the development and the testing. So accessibility should no longer be a second-class citizen, and this is what I'm trying to promote, is to accessibility should be a first-class citizen, not just second class. And when accessibility is taken care of, your application or website is future proof. You can have kind of a seal from companies that do this for living, like Audio Eye, Audible, or Accessibility. There are so many companies that do accessibility for a living, which means they do accessibility compliance, certification, the process, and you have their seal on your website. So now you're future proof. So nobody can challenge. And when they challenge, you can easily show that you have accessibility needs met in your organization. So any questions so far? If anybody wants to ask any questions, feel free. So laws and guidelines. There's different laws in different countries, and lots of organizations try to follow these laws. And Section 508, which is national, which is United States law, and we'll go a little bit deeper into that. And then there are guidelines, which call web conformance accessibility guidelines, or web content accessibility guidelines, whatever you want. And this is at the version of 2.1 right now, and it is international. When an organization takes care of web conformance accessibility guidelines of this international caliber, then this section 508 is kind of automatically met. So when you just try to do section 508 and do not go towards the international side, if your website is multinational where you are doing business in other countries, so you probably are better off doing the international guidelines, and those are web content accessibility guidelines. We are going to go into that details, and we will just for now understanding that there are guidelines and there are laws. It's the first step. So we talked about WCAG, Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, but where did it originate from? It originated from a World Wide Web consortium, we all know as Internet, and these are the higher governing board of the World Wide Web Internet. And then they have an initiative called Web Accessibility Initiative. And that Web Accessibility Initiative, which they call as WAI, has a team or a group of people, which is called Web Accessibility Conformance Guidelines Working Group, WCAG or WACG Working Group. And this team has done phenomenal job in creating all these standards and guidelines. And that is where all of the disability guidelines that are uh, in web content accessibility guidelines that are available. When we follow that, uh, the web application or mobile application or anything can be uh, completely accessible for a huge sector of disabled people. So Section 508, it is the Americans with Disability Act, right? And it is 1986 amendment to the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. So they wanted to make sure that until then there was not much care given to accessibility ramps, and there was not much care given to people with disabilities. And once there was all these challenges in courts, and then there were no laws related to accessibility, then there had been a good amount of effort. And I'm glad that countries have done this effort, and they have made that uh, anything should be accessible for people with disabilities. That is one of the main solutions that anybody can provide with their products and services. It could be your restaurant, it could be your software application, website, or mobile application, anything, right? And it has been recently updated in 2017. And what happened was all this, there is a little bit of confusion related to this 508, but there's a clear guidelines, right? Anything that is developed by federal government, like Rashmi over here was talking about USCIS and DHS and all of these government websites, cdc.gov, healthcare.gov, they have a mandatory that it has to meet the guidelines. It has to meet the Section 508, and all the law has to be abided by. And it's amazing that government leads as an example. In this case, government is leading with an example with all of their websites being completely accessible. So either AA or AAA level of accessibility. We are going to go that in a few slides later, what I mean by AA and AAA. But just understanding that federal government has a mandate for anything that has been designed or developed has to be accessible, and targeting websites. So now, if any organization that wishes to work with federal government need to also, if they have web presence, their website also has to be accessible to the. So if you are a vendor to the government and federal or state governments, and you want to work with them, your website has to be completely accessible. So it's always in the best interest of organization, for-profit organizations, if they want to uh, have government contracts or anything, it's better to make their websites accessible first before even they bid for the projects, right? Because when they rather choose lower features, lower capabilities, but accessible vendor versus non-accessible vendor that provides more features and functionality, they would rather want you to work on your accessibility, come back, and then bid for the project. But uh, so this is one of the reasons why it's crucial for every company to understand that it's more like a need, not just a want, especially when you're working with federal government or government organizations. If you like to learn more, you can just go to section 508.gov, which can give much more deeper information into it. So Web Conformance Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG, it's generally called WCAG. What is it? There are four major principles. The four major principles are perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. And as directly each of these words are sounding, they are exactly the same thing. Anything that has been developed has to be perceivable. Excuse me. If you have any challenges that people cannot see it, or it's very the contrast is not so good, or the text is very small, it is not perceivable anymore. And then it has to be operable. So that means if people have cerebral palsy or Parkinson's or whatever, they they cannot use the mouse or something and they can use the keyboard, then it should still be operable with the keyboard. And then it has to be understandable, right? It should be simple, straightforward, and not having to worry about the complexity of the information that has been presented. So that's where UI UX comes into the picture, because UI UX design takes care of making it simple, making it understandable, making it usable. So at the same time, it needs to be accessible, right? Which is also part of understandability for the understanding principle. And this principles are called as POUR, P-O-U-R, POUR, POUR principles, and it has to be robust. It needs to work in um, different devices, challenges that people will have trying to access a website on a mobile device. And if it is not mobile optimized, then they will be trying to read a small text, or the image is so small that it is very challenging for them to understand. Excuse me. So these four principles, so this is where I give you the length and breadth. So once with this one slide, you could understand how big is conforming for accessibility. How big is that, right? What is there and how much is there? So with this one slide, you would clearly get the breadth and the depth of accessibility. So it's four principles, and with these four principles are 13 guidelines. So just m- making a mental model in your understanding, four principles, and every guideline follows four principles. So these 13 guidelines follows all of that four principles, right? So when you meet all these 13 guidelines, you are golden, but it is bigger, right? It is not just these 13 guidelines, and those 13 guidelines have something called criteria. There are 78 criteria. So these are exactly 13 boxes, and these are 13 multiplied by 6. These are exactly 78 criteria. So this is in itself the length, also breadth, and the depth of accessibility. So when you cover these 78 criteria that fall under 13 guidelines that represent four basic principles, this is the hierarchy. However, it goes into mobility aspects and web, and it spreads into different form factors as well, right? So I mentioned earlier about AA and AAA level of conformance, right? So there are three different levels of conformance. And the first level is the most basic level of conformance, means you have a little bit of coverage for accessibility. You're doing some minor things, but it is still basic. So when you go to an accessibility company that does certification for accessibility, this is going to be a failure. So when you have a level A coverage and you want accessibility certification, you will be denied that certification. When I say you, it's organization or company or enterprise, whatever it is, right? The organization would be denied. However, if you go to the organization, to go to the certifying authority and say, we are at level AA, that means you have met the biggest and most common barriers have been addressed. So your organization has resolved all these barriers, and then they have said that, okay, we are good we want to get the accessibility certification, the seal. We want to put that in our footer. We want to share with our users that we are AA certified, and you can do e-commerce on your site, on our site. You can do anything that will not prevent you from having a disability, will not prevent you from doing whatever you need to do on our site. So when you go to the uh, certification company, they could say, yeah, this looks like you have met, and you are, and all of these AA level challenges have been covered. So you are going to be certified. Your enterprise is going to be certified for AA. And then this is the greatest level any organization can reach, AAA guidelines. That means everything on their website, everything is completely accessible. Either they have closed captioning, or they have alt tags, or they have different ways of giving that information for people with disabilities. This is above and beyond. Like if you cover 90%, then this is like 80% or 70%. Level AA is at 70%, level AAA is 90% and above. Like and then level AAA, level A is like 40% or 50%. So when you have 40%, do not expect you will be passing. When you have 70%, then you can expect. And when you have anything above 70, between 70 to 100%, then you have AAA coverage. This is the golden. And I would love to see all the companies here, but we would definitely accept companies over here. So that's the levels of conformance in accessibility. Let's look at the criterias, right? We mentioned about it. So here is one of the most basic level of just doing this, and you go to the certification company will not get you the certification, right? This is minimum mandatory, but it's not going to solve all of the issues if you have other issues. So level A 1.1, I'll just go through one or two, or maybe at the max three criterias, because we do not have time to cover 78 criterias. And I will give you the resources where you can go find those information into depth. However, in this session, we will cover only one or two. So all non-text content that is presented to the user has a text alternative that serves the equivalent purpose. So that means if there is a image of a beach, right, and image doesn't have an alternative text saying anything, then the user is who is using who is blind, who is using a screen reader, the reader will say image, image. That's it. So the user will not know anything. What is this image? But if you give the alt tag for the image and say an image of a beach where kids are playing in the beach or something like that, right? You can give a good description as well in the alt tag. And once you give that image and it says image of a beach where kids are playing on a beach, then the user knows, oh, okay, it's an image of a beach. So the user can move on to the next step, right? And then adding text alternatives for audio and visual video content, right? It's a very clear description of the topic. So when you have a text alternative for audio and video, and you could have a full transcript, or you could have while the video is going on playing, you could have the text, closed caption text on the bottom, where they can read because this is for people who cannot hear, and they can still read the text, right? So that's one other way of giving an alternative access for people with disabilities. Then adding a name to all of the controls, such as search or submit or something like that, right? So if you just say, if the text is not clear, right? Instead of search, you are saying submit, then the submit could be submitting a form, submit could be anything. But if you say specifically search, then it is much more clear to the user that it is something that they could search results for. Let's say searching a restaurant chains, something like that. So that's one of the most basic level of accessibility, level A. Then we go to another one, which is on the input, right? Like changing the setting of any user interface components does not automatically cause changes in the context unless the user has advised of the behavior before using the component. So what it technically means is you cannot change the user interface without the user knowing what's going to happen the next step. That means a user needs to be indicated, like it has to be a user action. Let's say you entered all the credit card information, and then you cannot automatically post that information without the user saying go to the next step, right? That's why you have this three-step process. When you're paying your credit card, they'll take your information, like how much you're going to pay, your balance, and then they'll give you a validation step, a confirmation step, where you can go back and edit, and then you can go back and submit. So that is the level of the flow. You cannot, as soon as somebody hits this and you just say submit it, you're done. It causes confusion, and you also want user to hit go to the next button or submit, and as soon as they enter the credit card information, you cannot if you suddenly change the user interface screen saying that you're processed, right, your payment is in process, that is going to confuse the users, especially people with disabilities. So that's one of the levels. So how it is structured, the WCAG is structured in a very methodical way, but it is a huge amount of documentation that you will see on the website for from the W3C Web World Wide Web Consortium. They have the dash. The next slides will come up with where the resources are. But here is the quick reference guide, right? How they are structuring. So this is from the WCAG 2.0, but same thing. Principles. We talked about the POUR, perceivable, operable, understanding, and robust, and then that having 13 guidelines, and then that has success criteria. So once you have all this, then you can validate the conformance. So an accessibility tester can go and look at all of that detailed difference, right? So what the requirement says and what the solution for that requirement is. So the solutions are implemented by the developers. Developers go into the HTML, CSS, and scripting language, or even the uh, mobile apps and mobility, or C sharp, whatever is the language they're using, and they make all that changes to conform to the guidance. So once these developers have done, and the testers or BAs, they can go and verify uh, all this has been met, the success criteria has been met, the guideline has been met, and the principle has been followed. And once it is done, then the conformance is done. So this is how the techniques work. So there is a developer sector section, instruction for developer, and the detailed reference for BAs or QAs or anybody who wants to validate the standard. And these are World Wide Web Consortium W3C standards. So this is how it is structured. And this is what I've been mentioning last, right? When you Google search WCAG 2.1, and this is an official page where you will land into. So once you start looking into there, what's in new in 2.1 and all of that guidelines. So this is where you will find all of that 78 criterias, 13 guidelines, and all of those guidelines are following that POUR principles, right? So, and so I think one of the challenges we all suffer sometimes are not being able to sleep in the night. So I can assure you, without having to worry about anything, you can take this documentation. Within 5 minutes, you will be falling asleep. There's so much of documentation that is available, and this is surely going to be, you don't need any other medication for sleeping. You just need this good documentation. That being said, because it's extensive, I'm saying it's so extensively documented, and the challenge is how to make sense of this documentation. It's like it's almost like the 2,000 page laws all of our politicians make, and people do not have time to read through those 2,000 page laws, right? So that's where you need somebody who can understand that, and you want to make sure that your company is following those laws, right? So that is where companies who do this accessibility for living will be able to assist your enterprise and organization. And if you are an organization that you want to invest your own time in without having to use a third party company, that is perfectly fine. All you have to do is come to here, and this is exactly the sources of information that they are using and making your site accessible. So you can use the same thing without having to employ them for this accessibility, because you might not have that budget, you might have only a little bit of time, but whatever it is, you can come to here, you can start working with the guidelines and meeting the criteria. You will be meeting the requirements. So, and here is the website, as I've been mentioning you to earlier. This is what I was trying to share earlier. WCA, w3.org, WAI, Web Accessibility Initiative, WCAG 21/understanding. So once you get here, you can read through all of this information. How everything works together, right? Developers do the authoring tools. They're using their integrated development environments where they're coding HTML, CSS, JavaScript, whatever it is, and they're using some technologies, evaluation tools, and they are going to make all those changes, and users are going to access these websites, and the browsers are rendering these websites, and assistive technologies are checking into these browsers, and then giving that information so the users can understand that information. So assistive technologies can be screen readers or magnifying things and anything like that. And all of these accessibility guidelines, there are multiple of them. Assistive technology accessibility guidelines, ATAG. So that means there are guidelines for assistive technology folks who are doing these tools for people with accessibility needs. And then web content accessibility guidelines. This is where your organization is doing your web applications or websites to conform to the web accessibility guidelines. And then UAAG, user agent accessibility guidelines. This is where the browser companies like Chrome or Edge, they are going and meeting these accessibility guidelines from them. So when your organization is going, they're either using all of these technologies, HTML, CSS, anything, etc. So that's how it fits. So authoring happens here, and assistive technology uses the browser to see the website and the content, whatever. So let you read this slide for a second, right? So this is exactly what happens. So with the physical disability, when a person with a stick is walking to the manager, right, and asking, and that person is just showing the way, just completely forgetting that this person is asking for help. It's because that person cannot see, right? If that person can see, why will he go and ask? He will help himself. He or she will help himself or herself. So what I say is, this is the challenge with not only with the physical disability, but also digital disability, physical accessibility, but also with digital accessibility. That means people who who have accessibility needs and the websites think that they are accessible are not really accessible. They are not really giving uh, all the tools for them to do A to Z, whatever they are here to do on the website. They are probably stuck at H or I, and then they can't complete, so they have to leave. And like that, there are multiple disabilities that if people are not able to do that, that is also lost revenue, right? So digital accessibility, we assume that the users are not disabled. So designing for accessibility, especially when we are designing, what we want to start thinking about different accessibility needs. And especially right now, let's start with designing for accessibility for color blind, right? So there are different levels of color blind, um, and using of different colors is going to be helpful. And in this section, you will see that a normal vision, they can, this person can see all these colors very perfectly. But a person with this kind of a color blind, I don't even want to attempt to say these technical words for this kind of a color blind. So this is a common type of color blind, which you can see the red has changed to this dark greenish color, and the pink has changed to the green, and this is how they see. So when you're giving a text in red, thinking that they are able to see the error, but they are not able to see the error. It's not red. The red doesn't exist in their vision. Then the rare one, this is even less colors than this, right? It feels like, or almost similar colors, but a little bit different. And this color is becoming different. And then the third one is even very rare, but still it exists. The red becomes pink, right? They can still see the pink. So all these challenges that the colorblind people have, how can we make sure we are designing it for them, right? So first, we have to be mindful of the color. We cannot assume uh, anything that everybody can see all the colors. Let's stop assuming that, right? And using a good color contrast, right? Let's not let's make sure that there's a good contrast and there is a different levels of color contrast that needs to be done. So for example, if for level A, when there is a color contrast of 1:3, you still are at the level A, but it's still not meeting the certification guidelines to meet. When you are 1:4.5, meaning foreground and background color, the contrast, whatever the ratio is. So the ratio is foreground and background. So 1:3 is level A, which is failure. 1:4.5 is level double A, which is meeting the guidelines. You will pass on the certification. And 1:7 is triple A. That means you are golden. You are like excellent. Amazing contrast. So this color right now, dark black over the gray, this would be in that range of 1:7. But if I put this orange color on this kind of an orange color, that will be a failure, right? They are more of an orange color, but that will be 1:3,
I have
right?
a quick question for you,
Sure.
Harish.
Yeah.
So, me being a developer, we use Bootstrap a lot,
Hmm.
and they have something like when say it's something in danger. A lot of we do use reds and stuff for like danger and shopping carts. What would you recommend beyond the color that we use? Maybe bolding it. What would you recommend?
Yeah, it is not the bowl. It is, you need to use something else along with that. You have to use error. So you can use the red color, but also have error on and an icon and a shape. So
Okay.
and clearly stating that there is an error, right? So that they can focus on that. So, yeah, and one of the challenges is as we said, people just assume that red color text is automatically meeting the needs. No, and you can use a shape or an icon and then a clear text of error, and this is what happened.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to add icons, make sure I use those as well.
Yeah, yes, yeah, that will be helpful. So don't rely just on color, right? Using shapes and text, right, when possible. That's exactly what Flo was asking. And then ensure accessible control. So when there are controls, sometimes these controls are not, they work very well for normal vision, but they are not so great for people with accessibility needs. Making sure whatever controls that you are using, these controls might be carousel controls, drop downs, accordions, charts, gauges, whatever it is, right? So try to make sure that it is available for people with accessibility needs. So UI elements like clicks, buttons, checkboxes, and everything. So make images readable, as we talked about with the image with on a beach. Making that readable image is much more helpful for people with disabilities. Enabling keyboard accessibility features. This is one of the keys to making it work with keyboard, where you can remove the whole mouse and just navigate through tab and key and space bar and different enter, all this, everything working with keyboard. That's one thing. And then perform accessibility tests. So when accessibility tests are performed, that's when it is much more clear that how much you are able to meet the needs, and especially with the conformance needs, like for certification, you can even evaluate your own site with a basic level of accessibility testing. So to highlight the violations, just as Flo asked, right? If we just uh, make this color different, because this is perfectly great for normal people. Everything is like, oh, yeah, is there a violation? Normal people will say, yes, this is a violation. And here, why? Because it's different color. That's great. But how about a colorblind person? That person cannot tell that um, this is indifferent, right? So what we can do for it, we can have a different shape of the violation, right? So now you are able to meet now everybody is able to see the change, right? It's not just a colorblind, but it is also for normal people. They can see where is a violation. Everybody can point to this one. And now, if you add red color and this, then you are like easy. You can find this in not just 30 stars. You can find it in hundreds of stars. There is going to be a difference because there is a slide. So if you imagine just this board of 100 or 400 stars, and then one triangle, and it could even take a few seconds to locate that triangle, but when you have that triangle with a color like this one, it will not even take few seconds, it will take milliseconds. uh, Same thing with like that. So making our outlook, so this is one thing, like one of the things, if we can make this as a habit, and it's much easier, and been I've tried this a few times, and sometimes I'm also guilty myself where I don't always make this accessible. So there is, when you're putting a picture and in an email, and if you just something called right click and then click on edit alt text, there is something like a box that is displayed. You just put that text, and just by doing this, you have made somebody who is and it's also helpful where emails are blocking some of these images, right? It can at least see the message of that image, right? So there are many more resources like that, adding text to images and different shapes, and for PowerPoint or any other things, you can start doing that. So once you start doing this, it will make much more sense that, okay, it's not that difficult to make it accessible. So let's talk about, we talked about designing for accessibility for people with colorblind, and now we are going to look into people with cognitive disabilities and how we can design it for them, right? So cognitive disabilities will lead into different directions, right? Learning disability, visualization disability, training and autism, those kind of things. So what are the kind of do's or don'ts in autistic spectrum, right? The do is use simple colors, nice and simple colors we can use, but the don't is use this kind of a contrast, right? Too bright of a contrast. You can get to 1:7 AAA level of contrast with simple colors, and these colors will challenge even normal vision, not just people with autism. Then the next one is write in plain English, right? Do this, do that, or something like that. Try this, search, or something like that. And let's not do some like figurative speech that they have to figure out something from, okay, this is herding cats or something like that, an image. So you're trying to communicate with an image, but that doesn't communicate easily to a tech, like easy directions. Because remember, you are trying to make it as easy as possible, and the more pictures you use, but and less words, that that's fine when your audience uh, are normal. But it is not fine when you have an audience where you have to make sure that they can understand with cognitive disabilities. Yeah. Then one of the do's for the cognitive disabilities is using simple sentences, right? And bullet points. So once you have bullet point 1, 2, 3, and 4, something like that, is much more easy for them, structured for them, step by step for them to follow those instructions step by step. As soon as you make it more complex, um, like everything is here and there scattered all over the place, and it creates and also a wall of text, it becomes confusing for them to their reading abilities, to go down, come back up, to go down, come back up, and to understand the context and everything. So it's much better to stick to the bullet points, leave some white space. And this is one of the design principles in the UX designer course that I have. Like white space is something that we discuss much more heavily, and the origin of white space and the Savannah principle. So that's out of the scope for this session, but uh, this also helps with the white space. And here, the white space is very less. It's very challenging to get to understand that information. Even sometimes it's challenging for normal people, uh, not just for cognitive challenges. Then making the buttons disable, right? Doing the buttons like attach files or images, submit, search, very action-oriented words. This is very descriptive and precise. However, something like click here and read more and all of that, like I mean, read more probably is fine, but they don't know click here to attach an image. If let's say if it is you are trying to help them attach an image, right? If you don't have enough directions and click here, they would not know to attach a file just by reading the click here, right? So making we should at all cost avoid making buttons vague and un unpredictable. So it has to be predictable, descriptive. Then one of the other do's is simple and consistent layouts, right? Uh, it doesn't, the layout, yes, it is appealing for normal users, but that layout might not be appealing. So let's say uh, the layout of BBC.com or the layout of a Wall Street Journal, it works very well for people with normal vision, but that layout might be very challenging for people with cognitive disabilities. So don't build complex cluttered layouts, and all this complexity. Complexity is an enemy of execution. Not even normal people like too much complex information. And when information is bombarded at a rate of uh, huge amounts of thoughts, like on a day, we have 70,000 thoughts that are, because we are seeing lots of information, we are grasping information, and there is already retained information in our memory, in our, so in 24-hour cycle, if we are getting bombarded with 70,000 ideas, thoughts, or other things, it's information overload. So we want a break from the information overload. Same is the case with people with cognitive. So when they are going at that your website, when your website is this, it the information is not overloaded. It's simple. Information is easy to be perceivable. So this also goes into the perceivable mode, right? One of the four principles, and this is non-perceivable. So this doesn't meet one of the criterias if the information is scattered all over the place on the website. So let's look at designing for people with low vision and disabilities like blind, low vision and no vision. So I come under this category. So in this one, do use good contrast colors, right? This amazingly contrast, this is very high contrast. You do not have to do this much contrast, but anything about 1 is to 4.5. That's level AAA, level AA, and level AAA 1 is to 7. If you can go above 1 is to 4.5, that's very, very good. So make sure that is done. And this is not meeting, right? I was giving you an example of orange inside of an orange, and this is even a better example. So this is 1 is to 2. I don't even think 1 is to 2, or 1 is to 1.8. Then this is really, really bad for not just people with low vision, but even for people with normal vision, it's very bad. So avoiding these kind of things at all cost is much more needed. So don't do this low contrast at all. And then doing the HTML, right? Publishing all information on the web page. So nice uh, information. So we need to do that, but blurry information and downloads. So like burying all of that information behind the scenes, and you are asking them to download before they can read. This is very challenging because we don't know what we are clicking on. If there is a virus in that download, right? You were thinking that you are on a correct American Express, MX, AEMEXX. If somebody typed in instead of AmericanExpress.com, or they typed in AEMEXX.com, and somebody has already created a site that looks like American Express, and this is a domain American Express will not be worried about, because they know their domains, they'll take care of their domains. But what about a domain that uh, doesn't belong to a genuine company like American Express, but they are trying to fish for people with uh, different people who don't know much of internet, or people low vision, or people with disabilities. So that is going to be a challenge, right? So that's where you not burying information under the downloads where malicious things can get on the computer. So clearly give information. If there is a download, what is that download about? What PDF that they are downloading? It's a case study. What case study, right? You are talking about a machine learning, artificial intelligence case study. So, and you say for the machine learning, artificial intelligence case study, please download the complete report for this. So that's good amount of information that they can feel confident that they are going to download a case study on AI and machine learning, right? But never just say for more download here. So if you say for more download here is going to be challenging. Next, designing for users with low vision, in which we can use an icon and shapes and color. Using a combination of color, shape, and text, right? This is much more, it's eye friendly, easy to understand. They can rely on even, they don't, sometimes don't even have to read the text, right? They can just rely on the icon. It's going to the next, or it's going to get started with the application, whatever it is. But this we should be doing, but we should not be doing only use of colors to convey the meaning. Like going next, if you did not have text and icon here, just have a green button, does that make sense? No, it does not make sense at all. Uh, and then and if, using these colors with the text and with the icons, that makes an application much more better than just the colors itself. And what we can do, especially with the magnification, and as you can see, my cursor is so big because I magnify it to an extent, and I for everything I read with this level of magnification. Uh, because this, I intentionally kept this presentation at this high text, so I don't have to worry about bringing my magnifier, and that's why my cursor is so big. So I need everything magnified. A lot of apps that I don't use on mobile phone is because I cannot magnify it. Yes, there are built-in features on iPhone where you can try to zoom, but using those built-in features on an iPhone, it's very difficult to navigate around the magnifier because you can completely go and click on the things. For example, here is the magnifier, and this is the maximum level I could go to the left. And if there is anything beyond that I want to read, I cannot. So this is what happens with this. However, having at least 200 magnification is what we need to do. And we do not want no magnification or magnification less than 200. You can go to 200, 300, 400, 500, whatever you can allow your users to go. The higher you go, the better it is. But do not do anything less than magnification of 200. Then what we have to do with buttons and notifications in the context, right? Putting the buttons. So when a username is correct or incorrect, right? The notification of username incorrect should be displayed just below it, rather than displaying somewhere down or somewhere up. It's going to be challenging for people to, that introduces something we call in my user experience course as a physical friction. And one of the physical frictions will make the application uh, have a lot of usability issues, and also application will not have great user experience. So let's not introduce any physical friction by doing that. So once we do this, when we put the buttons or the text or notification immediately, this is preferable. But this is not preferable where the button is way away far in separate lines and in separate, completely separate sections where it is not related. So there's something called Gestalt's related principle, which we talk in our UX course, the design principle that guides things that are related should have some proximity. So this has good proximity. This does not have good proximity. So this will confuse people with low vision. Okay, perfect. As I was talking to that, this is one of the design principles, right? Uh, Again, this is one of the Gestalt's design principles. This is bleeding into the user experience designer course that I have, but just I wanted to just bring this one here to understand this design principle, right? How our eyes group into uh, they group things that are of similar color, similar shape, similar texture, um, similar flow, right? So right now our eyes are grouping rather than let's say all dots, because these dots are black and yellow color, or and also they are separated by a distance. So now we can see two groups, right? So that's a Gestalt's principle where you can do related, and also um, this 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 group seems to be related and this group seems to be related. And then the proximity principle, that these two are closer together seems like one group, these two closer together seems like one group, right? So these groups appear to be separated by color or contrast, right? Black and yellow color or contrast. The proximity overpowers the signals of distinction, right? As seen in the example. So now when we saw group one and group two, the same group one and group two, same layout, same distance, but the colors are different. Now you cannot say that this is exactly group one and this is group two. There is similar tendencies, two or three black dots and this. So with this color contrast, what you can, if there is an application, you need to bring that kind of a, you need to overpower the related Gestalt's principle, then you could use something like this of color and make sure that it overpowers the distribution, like Gestalt's related principle. Sorry, it diverged a little bit, but because it was related to color, I wanted to bring this from the UX designer course into here. So designing for people with hearing disabilities, right? People with auditory disabilities. Again, writing in plain English will help, right? Not using figurative speech, that will be really needed. Then using closed captioning, we have seen many times on Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever social media we have been using. There is transcripts and there is closed captioning, and when people are talking, there is text displayed. This is exactly what we have to do. Uh, Wherever we can, let's keep doing this. I know it is a little bit expensive. You probably have to have a transcriber. You have to make the video again. However, if it's an enterprise and you are trying to sell your product or services, this will help you sell to more people, more organizations, and more sales, right? So doing closed caption is a kind of a good thing. And put the content, like, we should not put content in audio on video only. So if we just do audio or video only, we are missing on people with disabilities, auditory disabilities, right? So we have to make sure there is an alternative content, alternative text content or transcription or CC. So let's avoid at all case doing only video or audio. Then using linear layout, it's always, we have seen this was helpful with cognitive disabilities, but we are also seeing with um, cognitive disabilities, but it is also helpful with auditory disabilities, right? Using complex layout is confusing for even for people with auditory disabilities. Uh, then doing backup and content with subheadings, images, and videos. So when we have this, this helps with SEO, right? When you have good headings and subheading and content is laid clearly out, the media elements, the visual, the images, the videos, and everything is uh, nicely laid out in such a fashion, it is much more helpful for people with this disability. Um, Rather than using a long block of text and uh, having challenges with giving the information out. So doing this is very helpful with clear content, sub-content of heading, subheadings, videos, and images with closed captioning. That's a must, and this one is not so good. Next, do let the this is what we want to ask the users, right? Let's do this, right? Let's if your application or site lets the users ask for interpreter when booking an appointment or something like that. So if you don't provide some of the accessibility services directly on the site, you can at least give them an opportunity to call or like to be able to have some other means to be able to do the uh, tasks that they have come to your web application or your organizations. They they are here to give you business, and when you provide an opportunity that they could call them and call, or they could have an alternative approach so that their needs are met, so that means your business is also going to be taken care of, right? And don't make telephone only the means of contact for the users. I've seen this in lots of websites, and especially startup companies, and they do not give good addresses. They do not give phone numbers. They only have chatting. Um, it is, and then there's not response or like not accessible websites. So all this are going to add up. So your SEO is not going to pick up. You're missing on clients who would be potential clients, but you are not giving them more options to communicate with you. And there, the all these things, these best practices are going to not just improve the accessibility, but also improve your business and your credibility in Google's eyes, where you are a better website that addresses all this. So designing for users with dyslexia, right? Disabilities like that. So using, let's say if you're using images, right, and diagrams, there needs to be text that goes supporting with that diagrams, right? So this much percentage, let's say this is asset allocation for your finances in your 401k or something. So this was in US equities, this is in mutual funds, and this is in bonds or something like. So giving that clear information will help. So we need to do that, and we shouldn't do this, right? Large blocks of text and heavy content and all of that. Then with dyslexia, aligning text, right? Having having the text in such a way like this we also saw in other places, but this one is align text to the left and keeping a consistent layout is much more preferable. So when we keep this consistent layout, and aligning text is much better compared to underlining. And nowadays you've been seeing, like if you were on internet 20 years ago, you would have seen a lot of websites using underlining, bolding, and text with this kind of uh, it is no longer used anymore because of all of these challenges with people with dyslexia. And it is not only with people with dyslexia, right? It's also with normal people. I don't like seeing this kind of big text, uh, I mean, capital text underlined, um, different color or something like that. So it's better. The underline comes when you want to highlight, it's a hyperlink. Then you hover over it, the underline comes there, or a blue color text or something like that, or a button. Use of italics, capitals, and underline. This is big no-no, and you're not seeing these days anyways. But when you see it in your organization, just suggest them not to do that. Then another thing, what could be done, right? Consider producing materials in other formats, like along with the audio transcript, right? Audio or video having a transcript and having closed captioning and other modes of communication along with what you already have. And then do not rely or do not ask or force the users to remember things from previous pages. Uh, give them reminders and prompts, right? So even for us or like people regular, we could get confused when what did I give in the other page? Oh, I don't remember. Maybe I need to go back. Let me go back and check. So once you are doing that, you are introducing friction again, and you are asking users to remember what they have done in the past few screens. So try to not ask them information from 3 or 4 screens ago when they are filling a big form. Let's say this form had 100 fields that needs to be inputted. That was in 5 sections. They are in the fifth section, and you have to now ask them. You are asking them to go remember the thing from the first section. Then they have to go back 5 sections and come back. So that's a big no. Let's not do that. Then designing users more like same thing with consistent layout, short, clear, simple. This is a consistent theme as we have observed, right? This is a very consistent theme for lots of disabilities. Doing this will solve a lot of problems versus relying on accurate spelling, right? So this is one of the reasons why Google or Bing they give you they provide suggestions for spellings, right? Not everybody knows the spelling of dyslexia or something else. You give them options like type ahead and other things. If you don't give them the type ahead, it's you are already giving them chances of failing on their searches. Um, then the other one in the dyslexia is letting the users change contrast between background and text, right? So if if you let and this is where audio eye or something like that an accessibility tool comes into the picture where they can change the contrast on the background. When you do this, you are able to meet two needs. One, the need from the uh, from for the regular people, and the need for the disabled people where they can change the contrast and they they can change the background color, and they can have a higher contrast so they can read. So this is very good, and not not too much information at one place. So we should avoid doing that. So designing for like screen readers, like people with screen reading, especially people like me. So when we have alt tag, then it is it is easier to understand what the video is talking about, what the picture image is talking about, and not just only show like the video, but also give the alt tag, like we talked about in one of the earlier cases of web content accessibility guidelines. Then follow as a linear layout, uh, like we talked many times on that, and spread the content all over the page. So that's one thing. And then having the header navigation and the label. So all of this header navigation labels, it's going to help with semantic use of HTML and the content structure. And this is going to help with the keyboard when they are navigating with the tabbing. They can just tab from H1 to navigation to label, and they just keep on tabbing, and they can just hear it. The easiest way to imagine working with a screen reader is to close your eyes and then tab, or just use narrator. There's in Windows built-in something called narrator. You can just experience how a screen reader person uses it, and there's magnifier which I've used and all this. So we should not rely on text sizes like 36 point bold or something like that. Using the dynamic font, EMS, relative measures, and all of that, REMS and EMS, that will help to increase the sizes dynamically. Uh, then built for keyboard use only. Like, so when you build for keyboard use only, then your mouse will automatically work, right? So this is the toughest one. When you uh, when you build for the keyboard, that means you have taken into consideration a lot of things of navigation, move, tabbing, jumping from one place to other, filling information using spacebar, enter, and different special keys for them to be able to function on the application. And when you do this, it's like meeting the AAA guidelines, and you're automatically meeting the mouse guidelines. But when you only use mouse enabled, so the application is not enabled with the keyboard, then this is definitely not going to meet all the requirements. And then descriptive text, we talked about that, links and descriptive text like contact us and something like this. So what I was wondering is like, whenever there are places like, click here and click there, or something like that, we just have to reimagining. Can we like having a meeting with the team and say, hey, I know this is what we have in our website, but can we start having some action words? Can we start having a better layout? Can we? So whatever we can do to make that happen, right? So next one, people with motor disabilities, right? Make large clickable actions, right? Yes or no. Very large, easy to check, because their hands might be shaking. They might have Parkinson's. They might have. There could be people with cerebral palsy. When their hands are shaking, then you cannot. They cannot easily target. But if it's a big one, they can at least have a higher accuracy of targeting it. But when you make it very small, precision, it doesn't look so good. Then physical and mental disabilities. So giving them form, fields, space. So if you give good enough space between each, it is much more clear, like first name, last name, address, and other things, versus you're saying name and you don't know if this is first name or this is last name, and it gets confusing with all of the boxes that are not accurately labeled, or not laid out in such an easy to understand fashion, and interactions that go together, it's going to be confusing. So tabbing, designed for keyboard speech only use, right? So this is always better, tabbing, when you can navigate through keyboard only or speech only use, versus you are just asking to be mouse clicked, right? Mouse movement, you're only depending on the mouse. And mobile touchscreen. So having always mobility in mind, tablets, mobile, and how it's going to look in mobile is going to help with accessibility as well. So make sure it is touch friendly, make sure it's web friendly, make sure it's mobile friendly. That's going to be a big do. And a big don't is like have a short uh, timeout windows, right? If this appears for a few seconds and it goes by, goes back, then they don't even have time to react to that. Uh, Designing for one of the last ones is concise words, right? Shortcuts and concise rather than postal code. So if you if you can just take the postal code and fill up the uh, state, pin code, and there's going to be county or something like that, right? So try to design it in such a way that they just have to enter one address, like one address line, and because they have already entered the zip code, you can fill up the rest of the stuff, and if not, address line too. But try not to take multiple lines for addresses and then have them confused for scrolling. So again, coming to the conclusion side of it, why designing for accessibility? One is to cater to the market for disabled people. Reason one, cater to the market for disabled people, because most of the things, if your organization is catering for normal people, they could have 24% or 25% increase in the market with having application that is completely designed for accessibility. So you have more chances of sales, more chances of revenue and everything. Then a reason to abiding by the accessibility legislations, right? Making sure that um, with the conformance guidelines that we have shared today, and you are already abiding by Section 508 and all the other laws in other countries as well. So I was just saying all the other laws in other countries, and these are the other laws in other countries. United States Americans with Disabilities Act, right? United Kingdom Disability Discrimination Act 1995, Australia and Ireland, and like that, so many. And you might be any other country, you you would definitely have most likely laws and legislation for accessibility. So the reason three is to avoid potential lawsuits when something is not appropriate and where it has to be uh, available for people with disabilities. You can definitely be challenged by lawsuit. Some law so these have been some of the major ones that you have heard in the news, right? National Federation for Blind versus Amazon in 2007, and recent there was Domino's and so many other things. And these lawsuits go into hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars. So it's an investment would definitely avoid all of that. A little investment from the company. Which types of disabilities to support? Vision disability, physical, cognitive, almost like all of the disabilities that you can support, literacy disability and here, and what it can be done. So all these disabilities, when you have designed it, developed it, there are lots of tools that can help you for evaluating the accessibility, like Wave, TAW, and other things. Anyway, accessibility toolbar. And here's one of the company, WebIM, which is accessibility in mind. So these guys, this is their business, right? Accessibility training, assistance, certification. You can go with any of those. There's audio eye. There's so many things. So I just have two or three myths. I wanted debunk those myths. Creating accessible websites is expensive. No, it is not expensive. It can be done in different phases. It is much more cheaper to create right now versus $10. Let's say it takes 50 cents or $1 now. It will take $10 later. So that's how much expensive it becomes at a later stage. And changing inaccessible websites is also time consuming and expensive. It's also a myth. The fact is you can do it in multiple phases. It's not that expensive. You can do uh, some pages at a time. Let's say you have 50 pages, you do 5 pages each month, and then in 5 months you will be, or 10 months you will be completely accessible. So it's not uh, accessibility is only for blind and disabled. No, as we saw, accessibility helps everybody, not just blind and disabled. So uh, there's a lot more. And once you do all of this, you can go with the certification, and uh, it's called evaluation methodology, right? Uh, Web accessibility conformance evaluation methodology. So once you get this accessibility certification, you can display it on your accessibility statement on your website, and you will be great with it. So here are the action items I would like you to take. Advocate for accessibility in your organization. Start paying more close attention for accessibility, and try to design for accessibility, and uh, ask your company to develop and test for accessibility as well. So, and also be an advocate, not just in your organization, other organizations. Learn more. What we just searched, or what we just scratched the surface, right? There's much more deeper things. We went in one or two accessibility criteria. There are 78. So learning one or two is not enough. So there's much more that you can learn. And then once you learn to an extent that you can start teaching other people, you can join forces. You can come and join the nonprofit organization and help others, help educate others, and help make an impact in the world. This is for the betterment of the world as well, because when we help our fellow human beings, uh, we make a better world. And it is not, last but not the least, it's a revenue generation for your own organization. So do not think that it is not revenue generation. So one last slide. I have a professional UX designer course, which is published on Flora LMS. I'll show the, so where for somebody who has lost a job, or somebody who doesn't have an income, or a student at this particular point, I would like to offer this for free. But once they get a job, or they have an earning and they can pay back, they can pay back. So it could be free now, they can pay back. But one somebody who can afford it, this is a $6,000 course that I'm offering for $998. This goes into each class. It goes into UI, UX design, enterprise UX designing, architecture. It goes into, so somebody from level 0 can become a professional UX designer by taking this 16-hour course and then practicing for 100 hours. So in 120 hours, they can become a professional UX designer, because this is the experience, all of that 16 years experience condensed into it. And accessibility is also covered into this. Developing, we miss the accessibility testing, we miss the development, all of that is also covered to make it. So if you or somebody else who is interested, this is the website, solutionsuiux.floralms.com, to go for it. Thank you so much for attending today's session. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
All right. We have a question in the chat here. What do you feel is the most common overlooked 508 compliance requirement?
Yeah, this is a image with I think that accessibility guideline A, like level A 1.1.1, alternative text content. Like when you see videos and when you don't see a caption, you can, from now on, you can say that it is not following the accessibility guideline, because they are failing to meet that. So I see videos all over the place, and I'm guilty of it myself, because for a video that I want to put out for free, I would have to spend $100 to get that captionated. So I said, okay, and I'm a disabled person myself. I'm not helping my own brothers and sisters in disabled community, but I say, yes, if when I have funds to make this, because when people are giving it for free, right? You you do not know, like, do they have funds to create the closed captioning? Do they have funds to create the transcripts? Uh, but at least for the images, you could easily do that. So when you're posting anything on LinkedIn, and when you have an image, there is an edit icon there. You click on that and it will ask alternative text for the image. I keep doing that because that is in my control. That's for free. But when I try to ask for, hey, if I want to make all these videos, every video, it will take 80 to 100, or it could be even more. Each hour is going to cost. So I do not expect people to do that. However, I expect if there is an organization that want to help people with disabilities and take this content out, transcribe that, and contact those users, it could be even a business model that could generate revenue for somebody. So the short answer is text alternatives, closed captioning, and uh, images and videos, going with something that can be readable by screen readers. That's the short answer. Any other questions? Cool.
So one more.
Yep.
I see. There was more, I guess, to that question. JAWS is very, very expensive. What are some cheaper software alternatives that are decent? I could jump. So are we in JAWS? Are we talking about translation software, Harish, like
Yeah,
transcript?
yeah. The JAWS is used by Word or Excel or all these. They work very well with native applications. There is alternatives like NV Access, NVDA, non-visual desktop assistant, and then there
How
is
do you spell that one? I'll just put it in the chat.
yeah, NVDA, non-visual desktop assistant.
Okay.
Um, you can download it from NV Access, and then there is narrator that is built into the operating system of Windows, and then there is something on Mac that's also built in. There are alternative tools, but JAWS, the reason why they are expensive is they they keep up their software very closely with Office products, Microsoft products, or anything like that, and it is a much more comprehensive. You know, they have spent lots of hours, lots of time designing that. That's why JAWS is higher. However, there are other tools. If you can get other tools to work with, then it's great. If not, maybe that's when JAWS is probably needed.
Okay. And then we have another one. This is in the lines of your UI UX course. Do you offer personal training in your UI UX course? I wish I could see the names. Oh, okay. Rashi Sharma asked this one. Okay, I
Yeah,
guess I didn't have my chat open up a
yes.
large enough.
I do offer 2 hours of free coaching when they purchase my entire course. That means if somebody this course, which was I could say easily worth of $6,000 minimum, they are becoming a professional designer for $1,000. In that, I'll give 2 hours of coaching, in which I will give all the pointers that are needed, where they could take that as a guideline. And I have a like a testimonials page where people who have taken this course have benefited hugely, and especially a graphics designer. She is completely become from a, she was this graphics was designed by her right now. What you see, she's very good graphics designer. I stretched this slide a little bit. That's why you see it stretched, but. She's very good graphics designer, but she had no background in UI UX. So now she's at a now you give her requirements, she can build a complete mobile application, complete websites, complete usability, and all of that is covered. So because I've given her intensive the course and also given her some personal coaching, that makes her one of the best graphics designers that is at an entry level. At an entry level, she has the knowledge of a 5-year experienced UX designer, because the training is intended. This material is not taught by all of, because this is personal experience. This is also experience working in design teams and uh, UX teams, and being an architect and designer and an architect and a UI developer myself. So how to work with developers, how to work with the management, and how to work with the whole team, and how to bring the design into life, because it's a compromise. Designers have to compromise, developers have to compromise, uh, the project management, the timelines have to compromise, so that we bring a better product into market. So yes, the answer to this, once you purchase the full, I will give personal guidance and could be a mentor as well. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Cool. So I want to still be mindful of everyone else's time. There's quite a few people that hopped off already, but thank you for Harish for giving the talk. Thanks for everyone who hopped on. I dropped Harish's LinkedIn in the chat. I also put my LinkedIn on the Google Sheet that someone created earlier, so you guys can connect with me there. I know some people sent me an email about the slides. I will get the slides from Harish, as well as we will have this on YouTube once we're kind of done recording as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Flo, and I appreciate everybody joining today. And hope you will learn something about accessibility, and anything on accessibility, please feel free to reach out to me, and I would love to help anything related to accessibility. Have a great day.
All right,
Thank you.
awesome. Thank you all.